me down there and let me play with the jewels. I loved the blue ones and the green, but the red ones made me think of the dove that had fallen on the parapet after a hawk had plucked out both its eyes. I think I comforted it a little before it died, between my hands, but the blood that dripped from its beak onto its breast reminded me of white velvet sewn with rubies. Mother often sat all day at her embroidery frame, and I had to play alone. But on other days she would be gay, play hide-and-seek, or, in the spring, take me out to the hillside to gather wild iris. From autumn to early summer we were alone in the castle, except for a few servants in the kitchen quarters, and I was free to wander wherever I liked. I used to help in the herb garden when they were gathering the herbs to make cordials and simples, and run races with the kitchen children on the stone terraces where I fed the birds in winter. The great empty castle was a very good place to play in. One room was floored like the long gallery, with alternate squares of black and white marble, and when I crossed it I was always very careful never to step on the black squares. I don't know how this game started, but it always seemed very important. I could even go into Dona Isabella's own apartments, where the furniture crouched in the shadows like wolves waiting to spring on an unwary traveller, and the mice had grown so bold that if I stood quite still they would creep out of their holes and watch me with their little bright eyes. I had 3 dolls, and my favourite one was a blackamoor that mother had made for me out of a scrap of velvet. He was dressed as a negro page, with a yellow turban, and pantaloons of silk striped in green and mulberry, and he even had shoes with curling points. His eyes were very real, for the craftsman who came to mend one of the inlaid cabinets had made them from a broken piece of mother-of-pearl. He was called Salim, after the famous negro page, because I had always loved the story of Salim, and made her tell it to me very often. On Sundays, when mother took me down to the village to hear mass, I wore a green velvet dress and a skull-cap embroidered with wild flowers and brilliant-coloured threads. My hair was a bright sienna red, and mother rolled it in rags so that it would curl up round my cap. The little damp knobs were very uncomfortable to sleep on, and I often wished I were like the kitchen children, whose heads had never felt a comb. When Dona Isabella left her palazzo in Siena, and came to the castle for the hot weather, everything was different. I could not understand why she must never see me, and why mother was so frightened of her, but I knew I had to stay in our turret whose stairs she was too crippled to climb. I was kept almost like a prisoner, and was not allowed to go out of doors except very early in the morning, when all the grand people were still sleeping. It was only after I overheard Maria talking to my mother that I realized Dona Isabella was my grandmother. Maria was the head cook, and I was very fond of her. She was fat and friendly, and always gave me nice things to eat when I went into the kitchen. 3 days after her eldest daughter's baby was born, she took me down to the village to see it. The baby was very small and red, and it cried a lot, but Maria seemed to love it already, though she had only known it such a short time. While we were walking back to the castle, I asked her, "Why doesn't my grandmother love me as you love your grandchild?" At first she pretended not to hear me, but I went on asking her until she said, "It is because Dona Isabella is not your real grandmother. At least your mother is not her daughter-in-law, and a tie of blood is often a tie of hatred when it has not been knotted by a priest." I said, "I know I am a bastard." I didn't know what a bastard was, but I had heard people say I was one, and I knew it was caused by having a mother who wasn't married. "But I can't see what difference it makes. As far as I can see, I am just the same as your children, and I know they aren't bastards because I asked them." Maria didn't say anything. I thought she was offended, so I added, "In the long gallery there are 2 portraits of men of the house of Griffin, who were bastards, and no one seems to be ashamed of them." "That is quite different. You see, their mothers were married, and the father of one of them became a cardinal, and anyway, it all happened a long time ago."